You're listening to the Wealthy Lawyer Squad podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Klein, and the founder of the Wealthy Lawyer Squad, a community specifically curated for law students and lawyers who are ready for more success, wealth, personal growth and wellness, and ease in their legal career. With the tools and strategies I teach in the squad and that I've implemented in my own career successfully, I want you to get ready to approach your legal career in a whole new way and live a life you never imagined. I'm a former big law attorney, entrepreneur, law firm owner, and success coach for law students and new lawyers, and I am here to support and inspire you on your journey in the law every step of the way. Let's go, squad. This episode of the Wealthy Lawyer Squad podcast is sponsored and brought to you by Law Firm Sites. Law Firm Sites has been building custom websites and providing online marketing for law firms specifically for over 23 years. They are great at what they do because it is all that they do. So if you're looking to expand the reach of your firm or just improve your online presence, then Law Firm Sites has the team to do it. Go to lawfirmsites.com or call 800-932-8242 and mention the Wealthy Lawyer Squad to receive 10% off your website or marketing package that you choose. They are absolutely fabulous. Highly recommend them. Love them, love them. Go check them out. Welcome back to the Wealthy Lawyer Squad podcast. I am thrilled and excited to be sitting here today with Gabriella, Teixeira. I'm so excited for this conversation. I think that the things that we're going to talk about today, whether someone is listening and maybe thinking about going to law school, or they're not sure if they want to go, or maybe they've just gotten started on their journey, or maybe they're more towards the end, I think that there's going to be so many incredible nuggets of wisdom in here. And I hope that, we were chatting before we started to record, I hope that people can get that wisdom and take it and bring it into their law school and legal journey, because this is going to be some good stuff. So welcome to the podcast, Gabby.
Thank you. I'm excited. I'm a little bit nervous. This is my first time being on a podcast. So I feel so Yes. I feel so special that you decided to invite me here.
Well, I'm even more excited now. That's so fun. You're going to get addicted. Podcasting it's a lot of fun. And it's such a cool way. Like, you and I have already had some really cool chats. So it's such a fun way to kind of capture those. There's so many times where I'm talking to my law partner or friends or colleagues where I'm like, wow, that was good. I really wish we would have, recorded that and memorialized it, because there was some gems in there.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So Gabby, tell us a little about yourself, your journey, what you're up to, all the things.
Right. So I was surprised even that you asked me to come on the podcast, because I'm a very atypical non-full-time lawyer. I'm practicing as a pro bono attorney out of DC. I'm helping to seal criminal records, which is extremely rewarding, but something that I am, again, not doing full-time for reasons I can explain later. But in addition to that, I'm doing a few other side projects that I don't want to get too deep into because they're at their very early stages, but one has to do with a mentorship program for those who have recently finished serving their time and they need assistance re-entering into society. And then another one, and I can't even remember if we talked about this when we last talked, it's about an animal sanctuary in Brazil, where I'm from and very close to my grandparents' farm. So very unrelated and kind of all over the place, but those are the things I'm doing remotely. And then, of course, it's so important for me to be engaged with my local community. So I'm currently living in Lisbon. My husband and I are going back and forth between Lisbon and Brazil. But here in Lisbon, I'm looking to get involved with my local community, especially with the elderly and with children. So in sum.
Wow. Okay. Those are some really, really impactful and cool things that you have going on. Every time we talk, I'm like, wow, I'm just really impressed. And I love how you are doing the things that are meaningful to you and that light you up or that feel impactful. And you're just doing everything. Like, those are really, really cool and fun things that are somewhat related, but not. And I love that so much, to see someone just like living their full truth and their full life unapologetically. I think that's so incredible. And I hope that people see that. And if they feel like maybe they're not allowed to do that, they can kind of hopefully drop that self-limiting belief, because we can
Absolutely.
do whatever
Yes.
we want in this life.
I will say though that throughout this whole period, like it sounds so great, but at the same time, there's been a lot of doubts in my head. I think about all the work that went into get into law school. During law school, I'm like, shouldn't I be doing this full time? There's still a little bit of residual shame and guilt, even though I remember in my 1L year, I think it was the first semester, I had listened to a guest speaker who did not go into law as soon as she finished law school. I think she went into interior designing. And I remember feeling so inspired by her because I knew, and this is also something I wanted to talk about today, I felt so aligned about wanting to go to law school, but I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. I knew I would be in the public service realm because I essentially wanted to have more tools, more powerful tools to serve others, but I didn't know what that was going to look like. And I didn't really worry about that. And to this day, I have no regret, even if I do decide that I'm not going to be practicing in the near future. And I think that the advice I would give for anyone who is considering law school, if you don't know exactly what you want to do, that's fine. But if you feel really called and genuinely called, make sure you can distinction what is genuine interest because it's coming from you versus pressure from your parents or from society. I would say, like, for some people, they want to go to law school just because they want to make a lot of money. And that's fine. If that is genuinely what gets you motivated, that's okay. Like, that's not my case, but I'm not here to judge. And I think at the end of the day, you have to do what feels authentically aligned.
Yeah, that's so good. And the reality is there's no rules. I think as long as we do follow our gut, we follow where we're called to go, everything will work out. I didn't know if I wanted to practice when I went to law school. I also felt called. I was a finance major, and it was 2008, 2009, and the world was going crazy. So I thought, I'll bide my time, and I know it will work out. And there were bumps in the road, but it all worked out. Everything is always working out as it should. I really do believe that. So tell us about, where did you go to law school? What year did you graduate? What did you do while you were in law school? Like, what did you get involved in? Things like that.
Yes, I went in at the start of the pandemic, so 2020, graduated 2023, and this was at the University of Miami School of Law in Florida. What I did, so I got involved there was a Brazilian association group, which was awesome because it made me feel more at home having that group of friends, of course. And I also got involved right away with the Insightful Mindful Initiative, which is a group of students who incorporate mindfulness, meditation into their time in law school and beyond. I know we talked about this earlier. That class on meditation in law was one of the best classes. Like, it's a life-changing course. For anyone listening who is in the area and is considering going to the Miami Law, I 100% recommend it.
It's amazing.
What else? I think those were the two main extracurriculars that stood out to me in terms of internships. So, like I said, I knew I wanted to do something in the public service realm. So I interned in the PD office, public defenders, if there's anyone listening who doesn't know what that is. I also interned at the MacArthur Foundation because that was after I did PD work, and I realized I was not going to be doing PD work. And then the MacArthur Foundation with the legal counsel was more transactional type of work. So think reviewing contracts and writing contracts. I feel like I'm missing one intern there, but yes, it was in litigation and it was in prisons rights, but I'm blanking on the name right now, but it was Florida based. I think Florida Institute of Justice, something like that, but wow. I can share it with you later once I remember.
So cool. It makes me want to go back to law school and try other things. Like, I feel like when you're in law school, it seems like a very long period of time when you're in it, but also there's so many different things to try and do while you're there. And the time does in some ways fly very, very fast, and you're limited. You have your summers, you have your semesters, and you kind of have to pick and choose. But it's so
Super.
cool.
And there's so much to learn. It's so different than undergrad. I remember undergrad, during and after, I was like, this could have been done in 2 years. But law school, I'm like, I needed so much more time. There's so much to learn, all the different places we could work. And
I know.
I agree.
What was the main thing that kind of stood out to you or that you took from that class on meditation at UM?
One of the analogies that my professor made that really stood out was about how 15 minutes of your day, when you think about the 24 hours that you have, is barely nothing, but it is so profound when you take those 15 minutes to practice meditation. In meditation, I think I just want to clarify one thing, because a lot of people confuse meditation with mindfulness, and this might be a whole other episode, but it's really about you being still and focusing your intention on one thing. It could be a mantra, it could be just focusing on your breath. There's also what's called open awareness, which is not what we would recommend to start off with, which is basically just listening to what's around, feeling any sensations in your body, perceiving really. But for a lot of people who aren't used to meditating, this is very hard, because then they usually just jump back to like their to-do list. So taking that time, sometimes for me, it's only 5 minutes a day. I'm going to be honest. Okay. Yeah. But when I only have 5 minutes, I know that I'm going to be extra conscientious throughout the day to have more moments of mindfulness, which is different than meditation. Mindfulness is more intuitive or self-explanatory, I should say. It's about being fully present in whatever you're doing. If you're washing the dishes, you're there feeling the warmth on your skin, you're listening to the sound of the water. And those breaks for our minds are so, so precious. So that was one of the biggest takeaways that I had from that class, is just to incorporate more of that time of meditation and throughout the day of mindfulness.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. I know every single law school in the world should have that, because it's the best. When I meditate, and I don't do it every day, especially now that I have kids, I find it's been a little bit more challenging. And I try to just wake up a little bit earlier, but it doesn't always happen. I can feel the entire day, even if it's 5 minutes, like you said, or 10 minutes or whatever it is, I can feel that in my nervous system, literally the entire day. It's incredible. And it can be free. I just go on YouTube all the time and I find these amazing meditations. So I think everyone should meditate. But I think especially in law school, learning that practice early in your career is invaluable. Yes.
And I would add one thing too, maybe for a lot of type A, like law school students, don't worry about doing it the right way. If you like meditating to beautiful angelic music, that's fine. You don't have to think of meditation as always having to be in silence. It's whatever is making you feel good. Because at the end of the day, you're not meditating to be a good meditator. You're meditating to be good at life or to be a better person. So whatever is making you feel like your best self, and try to get to that point where to not take some of that time for yourself is like to not brush your teeth, where you just feel kind of gross. And like you said, in the morning, you feel that difference when you get that time in. So that's when it's officially a habit, and you know that you're doing it for yourself and not because you're trying to check some box off.
Yeah. Thank you for saying saying that. I think that is really important for all of us A-type individuals out there. So I know you were on a panel at UM and you had some really incredible questions that you shared with me that I thought, wow, when I was sitting in the chair as a 1L at orientation, or, that first semester, if someone had said these things to me, I think it would have really made a very big difference in the way that I thought about my law school journey and the things I allowed myself to do. So I'm going to ask a few of them because I really think that they're important for those, who are in law school to hear. But let's start with a fun one. What were you most excited about when you were sitting in that, that chair at orientation, your first year of law school?
I think, and this is so contradictory to like Buddhism and presentness, but I was so excited of that feeling of accomplishment of the after, like how much I was going to be able to do with that Esquire title, and feeling so powerful, and looking back at all the hard work, because I knew going into it is going to be really, really hard, as it was. So yeah, it was that. And then of course I was so excited about all that I was going to learn. I am a forever student. And so I felt really right at home at orientation, but also of course, really, really nervous.
Yeah. Oh, I can remember it like it was yesterday, and it was over, I think it was like 15 years ago at this point. And I literally remember it like it was yesterday, feeling very excited, but also what did I just get myself into? Especially there was no questions like these, that kind of focused on, okay, what should you do to prepare yourself internally and to kind of, keep yourself motivated and keep yourself in a good mental and physical headspace. There was none of that at my orientation. What would you encourage law students to do before that very first day of class?
The first thing is to think about your non-negotiables. So what are those things that you are not willing to sacrifice? And don't think in terms of 100%, there might be some exceptions, but for me, that was things related to fitness, related to healthy eating. And I think I had decided that I was going to take off at least half a day over the weekend. I don't know. That changed as you go throughout law school. For some people, it was absolutely no work at all over the weekends. But it's important that you do this work before and write it down if you can, to reference it during law school, because then you have something to hold yourself accountable. Yeah. So the non-negotiables. The second thing too is to have a conversation with your family, whoever you're living with, if it's your partner, about what they can expect in terms of the support you will need, and also about how you might not be as available for them. So I was in law school my first semester. We were in Miami, didn't really do lockdown, but I was with my in-laws, my husband, my brother-in-law. We were all in one like 2.5 bedroom apartment.
Oh my gosh.
No one on my husband's side had done any legal work before. Or by legal work, I mean, they had never experienced law school. Yeah. So most dinners I would miss, because even though it was like 8:30, 9 p.m., I would be in flow doing my outlines. And I told them, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to eat later on my own. Please go on without me. And they took that as a personal offense. Whereas my mom, who had been through law school, she only did one semester. It was too much raising 2 children. But anyway, she knew 100% what that was like. She was like, of course, you're going to miss dinner with the family. Right. That's fine. It's not forever. It's a period of time. Maybe 2 semesters, maybe it's all 3 years. It's what works for you. But I really had wished I had talked to my family more beforehand about that. I think I had just sent the family group and in the chat a message, because this was advice given in orientation. And that didn't really count. I needed to actually, I think, sit with them eye to eye and communicate that need for them.
Yeah, I think you're right, because if someone hasn't gone through this or had another, family member or loved one go through the law school process, especially the first year and especially that first semester where you're really trying to establish your grades, from that time period, you just don't know, you don't understand. And you might think, oh, are you taking it to an extreme, or, is this not typical? When in fact, it is very typical. And maybe you can make dinner sometimes, but you have to do what works for you. And like you said, it's a temporary time period with an end goal, especially that first year. So I think that's really, really great advice, and not just a text, but actually sitting down and saying, hey, this is new to me too, but this is what I'm hearing. And this is, I think, what I can expect. I need a little bit of grace, and it's only a few years out of a hopefully very, very long lifetime. So I think that's really, really, really good advice. Yeah. And I think it leads really well into the next question. And I know balance has kind of been a little bit overused lately, the word balance and work-life balance, but what tips do you have to really help students find a successful balance between law school and personal life? Because you still have to have a personal life, right? We're not robots. We're not computers. We still need to be able to have our own individuality, which I think is super important in law school. So what tips would you have for those students?
Right. And I love that you mentioned the robot word, because that's exactly what I was going to start with. Whatever you set out to do. So we talked about having those non-negotiables.
Yeah.
Remind yourself that you are not going to be perfect, even with those fun things that you want to do. So maybe it's on a Sunday, every Sunday you take the time to plan out your week. And that's not only just things you want to get done with the law school, but also what social events are you going to squeeze in? What workouts are you going to squeeze in during that time? If you have a spiritual practice, right, whether that's meditation or going to church, like when are you going to incorporate that? I think planning in advance and not day by day is one of the best ways to set yourself up for that balance with your work and with your personal life, and also just have so much flexibility. I was so surprised by how I think only towards the middle of my second semester, 1L year, is when I felt like I was in the flow of things. Yeah. I was every week changing my schedule. Sometimes I noticed I was efficient certain times. It's compared to other weeks. It was crazy. I really thought that by 2 weeks I would have it figured out. And so that is a big, I guess, warning or something to keep in mind of for your listeners in terms of what to expect. Because with every other job that I've ever experienced, within like 2 weeks, you're kind of in the flow. Like you get what to expect. But with law school, there was so much adapting. And then it changes again when you get new classes.
New classes, new professors, new times of the day. And I think the biggest thing that people should take into account is you have to kind of figure out what works for you, So like you said, like kind of it's okay to change if maybe the schedule doesn't seem to work for you that week or in general, it's okay to pivot. Like we don't have to be super rigid. I think it's more important to figure out what works for you and then do your best to stick with that. And I did not do that in law school, sitting down on a Sunday and planning out my week. I do that now. And I have to say, to ensure that you get what you need to get done, to not feel that squirrel brain, monkey brain of like, oh my God, I have so many things, like, because sometimes we can spin ourselves out just thinking I have so many things to do, when if we just put them down on a piece of paper or on our computer, it takes it out of the brain and, onto your schedule. And at least for me personally, it allows me to relax and enjoy, and I think that's key. But being flexible, I think, is huge, and not being hard on yourself if it takes you a while to figure it out, because I think it takes everyone a while to figure it out, even if everyone's kind of pretending like they're good and they're fine.
Yeah. And thank you, because you mentioned something that I really want to harp on, and that is about not comparing. I know that sounds like impossible to do as humans, but try to treat your colleagues around you as not even proxies, but let's do this. Let's think of it as this way. I think if you're going to take the time to compare, which we're all going to do as humans, why not compare to those people who have accomplished what we want to? So if I'm in my 1L year, I'm going to be comparing myself to those in 2L, 3L, or who've already graduated. My colleagues around me are kind of all figuring things out along with me. So if it takes me an hour to read 10 pages and it takes my colleague 30 minutes, I don't want to feel like crap, right? But I wish I had received that advice, because I was doing a lot of that comparison. Like, why am I studying 80 hours a week when this person's only studying 40 hours? They're going out. They seem to be doing really well. And you're really just wasting energy. Of course, if you feel like there is something you are really missing, and that's when I say, like, seek a mentor, seek that office hour with a professor. Don't waste time comparing yourself to those around you.
I could not agree more. And I think that is that particular, the comparison is one of the reasons that I think that mental health and mental well-being declines so rapidly in law school. especially compared to other graduate programs. Like all the studies show that most people go into law school on like, an even mental health playing field. There's some people who have already, pre-existing conditions or struggles. There's others who, seem to have not struggled as much, but for the most part, it's like the average, group is going in, but within a few weeks, mental health declines significantly. And I think that one of the reasons is the emphasis on all the external factors of success and the comparison and everyone kind of pretending like they know what's going on when most people have no idea. If you have maybe a parent or another family member who's a lawyer, maybe you have a little bit more of an idea. But yeah, you just got to give yourself some slack and just compare with yourself. Like just try to be better than the you from the week before and continuously improve on as you learn and as you go through the process. And I think it's funny, when I did my LLM after law school, the first semester, I studied really, really, really hard and I was freaking out the whole time. But then I got a job at Deloitte halfway through the year. So the second semester, all the pressure was gone and I could just focus on learning and enjoying the process. And I did better my second semester than I did my first. And I know that's because I was able to just focus on the learning, enjoy being the student, and just be, rather than worrying so much about how I was doing compared to everyone else in the job search. And I thought that was just fascinating. Absolutely fascinating.
Exactly. And that ties well with what I was going to say too. I wanted to give a little bit more tactful advice about how to not compare yourself to others, because it's one of those things like easier said, harder to do.
Yeah.
When you do catch yourself in those comparison whirlwinds, remind yourself what your why is. Why are you here in law school? Was it to be better than the colleague sitting next to you? Obviously not. You're here because you wanted this X job. And then you can remember, okay, so what am I doing to get to that dream? All right, I'm focusing on my grades. I'm focusing on my work-life balance. And then that person next to you just kind of vanishes away, right? So bringing it back to your why throughout law school is so crucial before any exam, before any of those really stress-provoking moments. To come back to your why is such a centering practice that I'm really glad. I think I learned this in the early stages of law school.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's huge. It really is, because there are going to be moments where you feel like, why the heck did I do this? Why am I here? You want to give up. And, some people do decide to pivot out of law school, and that's totally fine if that's what feels good for you. But I think so often in anything, even in starting a law firm or things that I've done, I'm like, you just have these moments where your energy levels are low, your nervous system is just not in a good place. And you just have to, like you said, I love that, going back to your why, recentering, and maybe stepping away, maybe saying, you know what, I'm going to go to bed, or I'm going to watch a show, or I'm going to read a book. Because if you are sitting there and just kind of spinning your wheels, you're just going to reduce your energy levels even more. And sometimes you just have to say, okay, let's just call it a day. And tomorrow will be better. You'll wake up and you'll feel stronger and better.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. And I want to, before we move on to kind of like the bar study and all of that, because I love the article that you wrote. Before we started recording, we were talking about specifically women in law school and our menstrual cycles and our energy levels. And I know we kind of alluded to that a little bit earlier, of like some weeks we have more energy and other weeks we don't. And I think that I'm so glad that you brought that up and that you wanted to talk about it, because it's something that it's life. It's life. It's our bodies. It's our hormones. And I don't know how in society we got to a place where it's like taboo to talk about this stuff, because it's literally our bodies. So let's talk about that. Like, what was your experience? And do you have any, now that you've gone through law school, like any thoughts on it or tips?
Absolutely. Yeah, it is quite crazy that this was never a topic in any of the panels, anything in orientation. I just amongst my girlfriends, we talked about this, but wow. So let's see, first semester, I lost a lot of weight. I am the type of eater where I lose my appetite when I'm anxious.
Same.
And at the same time, we hear a lot of the expression of like, I'm going to go blow some steam off, like to exercise, do high intensity exercises. Because yeah, we do feel a little bit better afterwards. But really those high intensity exercises are elevating our stress. So we're already in an elevated, stressful environment, which is law school. For women especially, we need to be extra conscientious of balancing out that stress around our luteal and menstruation, which is when when we're more sensitive to stress. Right.
Yeah.
So during those times, like I wish I had probably done more walks and yoga and just like stretching, and preferably outside. Of course, if you're in Florida, like ideal, you can have the outdoors available to you all year round.
Yeah.
I think that would have helped to maybe reduce some of that anxiety so that I could have been eating better. I lost my period the first year of law school because I had all that weight loss.
Oh, wow.
And I regained it quickly back after, I think, during that first summer.
Yeah.
But
isn't that crazy how our bodies, we really feel it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, I think just for women, especially be very mindful of your elevated stress and plan ahead of time of what you're going to do to try to reduce your stress. So sleep becomes more important, more nourishing meals, of course, your social life, like calling a relative, time with nature. Like, these are all things that can really help to reduce your stress.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you brought up this topic because this has not been discussed on the podcast, and I don't even know that it's been discussed on any of the panels that I've been on, kind of talking about our journey as women in the law and like what that means. I talk a lot about money and being a woman in the law or in general, and kind of just more of the societal stuff, but I've never talked about this on a podcast or on a panel. So I'm so glad that you brought it up. And I think that it's something that we should probably even explore and talk about further because it is real life. And it is even this week, I had my first 2 days of my period, and like 2 days, I was like a robot, like literally, like I couldn't, my brain wasn't working. And I was like, okay, I just need to put work to the side or focus on tasks that require less of my mental energy. And this week right now it's beautiful in Florida. So I took a walk, outside in midday. My little one just started school this week. So I had like an empty house. It was very weird, very freeing, but also weird. So I actually took a walk. But I think just giving ourselves grace and allowing ourselves to be aware of our bodies and our hormones, I think is really, really key, and not it's easier said than done, but not just pushing ourselves to the point where we are completely drained and burnt out. Obviously, we all know we want to avoid that, but I think things like your cycle, are really important to consider in all of that. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. So let's talk about the bar exam. And I love how you were open and honest about how there were parts of the bar exam process that you enjoyed, and then there were other parts or times that you didn't, because that's how I felt too. Like, I feel like everyone hated it. And I was like, I actually am in some ways enjoying this process. It was hard, but I also felt very accomplished. So tell us a little bit about the article that you wrote. And I have here, kind of the different, the 3 points that you touched on, and I can read those out if that's easier, but I'd love to hear like what inspired you to write this article.
So I had taken that class on meditation and mindfulness in law school, and it was a class that required an application. So not many of my colleagues had taken it, and I had realized that for my colleagues who hadn't taken it, they were going through, let's say, much tougher bar experience. Of course, correlation, not causation, but I know that if they had I'm almost certain that if they had taken it, they would have at least had a few more tools in their toolbox to help manage their stress with bar prep, because the mindset work is so important. And what inspired me to write that article was that all the bar prep courses I was taking, the one at law school and then the one we pay on the side, right? They were not mentioning mental health. Maybe there was like a 5-minute reading that the bar course I paid for offered to
really?
us.
I don't even think I had that. I don't think
Yeah,
I
and
had
it was
anything.
at the very end of the bar prep.
Like, well,
I
I could have
needed
used
this.
that in the beginning. Thanks.
Yes. So I felt inspired to write that because I wanted students to do the work beforehand, the mental prep work. And that has to do a lot with, of course, meditation, but also reframing the whole bar process. Because I see so many people complaining all day, every day. And I saw it as an awesome opportunity to, in 2 months, review and learn new things that I had in like 3 years. This was the final stretch. After this, I was not going to pursue any other education. I mean, never say never, but I was like, this is the last time where I'm preparing for a major exam. Like, this is so exciting.
Yeah.
And so every morning I woke up with that kind of energy. Like, well, this is my moment to prove all of not just these last 3 years in law school, but since the start of my education, right? Because every layer grew upon each layer. So we're talking about from the start of kindergarten. Like, I mean, I get emotional thinking about it, but that's the energy I went into with bar prep, was like, this is the like Super Bowl moment. That's how I felt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I love talking to you so much. And I feel like there's not many people that I can talk with this stuff that like really get it, because I feel like sometimes when you tell someone like, well, wake up with, set the intention of being excited and wake up, and it will influence how you feel, because it sounds almost too good to be true. But it's what athletes do. What do athletes do before a big game like the Super Bowl or whatever it is, or, the Stanley Cup? They don't just practice physically. They visualize, they set their intention. They, if you talk to any coach, any sports coach or business coach, these are very common things, but for whatever reason in the law, they almost seem like hokey or woo-woo, when in fact it's truly the science of our brains. We do have a lot of, influence on the way that we see the world and our perception. So thank you for saying all of that, because it's so true. Like, if we just decide that it's going to be an awful, horrible, shitty experience, it will probably be an awful, horrible, shitty experience. And it's not to say that if you wake up with excitement, there won't be awful, shitty, horrible moments in your day. Maybe some topics you like more than others, or whatever it is, So thank you for saying that, because it really is everything. It's everything.
Yeah, but emphasis on those shitty days, because I don't want to put myself on some pedestal where I was like, oh yeah, it was beautiful rainbows and butterflies every single day. No, I mean, I think I found myself depressed for a few days towards the end of the bar process.
Yeah.
But I was able to snap out of it because I was able to reframe myself, or reframe my thinking, and recenter myself back into my why. Because of these tools I had again in my toolbox. So I'm saying, having these practices, meditation, the journaling, the recentering practices, like, it's not going to completely solve all your problems, but is it extremely helpful? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And it's free. It's free.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Amen.
So in your article, you kind of talked about 3 things that you would point out. And I think we'll go over them just quickly, in the interest of time, but I think they're important. So the first thing you said was, and this, we touched on this earlier, identify your why for taking the bar and for passing the first time. So we talked about, your why in law school, but I think it's definitely worthwhile to kind of every year in law school rethink your why, or every semester, but especially before the bar exam, because it is a different experience than law school itself. Is there anything that you would add to, or is there anything that you want to share about your own why, with the bar, that really helped you push through those hard days?
Yeah, I think the why for wanting to pass on the first time was simply about me starting to work sooner. The sooner I could start working, the sooner I could help people. But at the same time, and this is really important, going back to the framing thing, I was open to the possibility of not passing my first time. Now,
Yeah.
was I glued to that thinking? Was I thinking about that daily? No. So I had a colleague who is not a meditator. Again, I don't want to make it seem like it's such a perfect equation, but he was a really great student. He was super dedicated, did all the bar park courses, but he honestly thought every single day that he was going to fail. Like, he would call me panicking. And I told him, you really got to do this work on this mindset shifting. And one of the pieces of advice I gave to him was to journal what would be the worst thing that could happen if you didn't pass. And this goes for everything. This goes for LSAT, any law school exam, MPRE. Write a letter to yourself. Like, okay, Gabby, right? We didn't pass this. We didn't get the score, but this is all the stuff that we get to do now. So if you didn't pass the bar, maybe it's your time, if you have the financial means, to take a few weeks off and go travel. Try to put it, what you're essentially doing is you're trying to neutralize the outcome. Right?
Yeah.
You don't want to put all your eggs in the basket. You don't want to put all your hopes and dreams into passing the bar in the first time.
Yeah.
You want to be able to, of course, be excited, have that goal, but don't put it on such a high pedestal, because you will put way too much pressure on yourself. And what we want to do is alleviate some of that pressure as much as we can. So I don't know if I exactly answered your question, but it was something really important that I did want to share.
No, I'm really glad that you shared that. And I think in life, law practice, life in general, law school, when you are freaking out about something or you feel like something is the end of the world, I think that's incredible advice to say, okay, if that did happen, let's really play that out. What is the worst case scenario if that happened? And when you really start to think about it, you're like, okay, I will still have, fresh water. I'll still be okay. I'll have, I'll have the ability to do something else. Maybe I'll work, somewhere, or I'll travel, or I'll do whatever it is. When you really take the time not to just to spin out with the anxiety but actually think it through, like, okay, that's not the outcome that I want. That's not the outcome that I'm going to, constantly, center on or focus on. But if it did happen, life will not end. Everything will be okay. And maybe it even means that something better is going to happen. Maybe there's a reason I'm passing the second time or even the third time. It happens. I've had many friends in law school who didn't pass the first time, and they went on to have wonderful and successful careers. And it matters. I doubt they think about it ever,
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. For my good friend who also didn't pass the first 2 or maybe even 3 times, I told her, like, this is such a resilient, strength workout. Think of it as that way. Like, I was so proud of her for her perseverance, because and I shouldn't be the example in this, but I told myself I'm not taking this bar again. But again, because I'm a different, atypical lawyer where I knew I wasn't going to practice full time.
Yeah.
But my friend, and for all those people who take it more than once, like, that takes so much perseverance. So I'm sure that perseverance is a strength that will apply to other areas in their lives outside of the bar context.
Yeah. And then when other hard things in life come up, you can tell yourself, well, I've done really hard things before, so I can definitely do whatever it is, that I'm going through now. Even when I became a mom, I'm like, this is hard, but I have done some really hard things in my life, so I will figure this out and it will all work out as it should.
Yep. Exactly.
The second thing that you said was to, organize yourself so you have the most time possible to study. And I think it kind of goes to the same thing that we talked about during the law school journey. But is there anything specific to bar study that you found helpful for organization?
Be flexible. Like, for example, with me, I used to be really rigid about eating at home, making my own meals. And so I found myself being more flexible about eating out, about asking for help around the house with cleaning. I have this I'm working on this, but I tend to just want to do everything myself, even if I'm going to be more stressed about it. And I just sometimes find it easier than to ask someone to do the dishes, because they might resist. And anyway, Yeah, so that's what I mean by setting yourself up for success, and before you're in the midst of this high stress, like organizing yourself as much as you can, and like having that pep talk with yourself, like, okay, Gabby, we're going to be a little bit more flexible than we usually are. This is, again, a temporary phase. Your workouts might not look the same, not the same duration. Your social life is definitely going to drastically change, but this is just a short time period. It's like 2 or 3 months. It's
It
not.
really is. It's just a little blip, in our
Mhm.
lifetime. It's so
Exactly.
true. And the third thing you said was, and I think this is really important, seek a neutral mindset without any expectations other than bar prep will be tough. What does that mean, and how can people take that with them as they go through the process?
So this ties back to earlier how I was saying I was comparing others in that I was studying 80 hours and I had friends who were studying 40. My mentor during the bar prep process, she had studied maybe about 40 hours, completely took her weekends off. And early on in my bar prep stages, I realized that's not going to be me. And accepting that was really, let's say, important for the bar prep process, because I told you earlier the whole comparing thing, like that's essentially our time and mental focus being wasted, right, where we could be doing something else more valuable. So just going in saying this is going to be tough. I'm not going to go in thinking what is the exact amount of hours that I need to be studying for me to feel like I'm doing the right thing. No, just every week might look a little bit different. You might need to spend more time studying certain subjects you haven't learned yet in law school. So I don't really like the word overthink, but sometimes it is really true. We have to try to not overthink. And this example of not overthinking it, if you're doing the bar prep process right, is really important. It's quite straightforwardly laid out for you. So
Yeah.
focus on that.
That's so good. I mean, like I predicted, there's so many nuggets in this episode. I'm enjoying this conversation so much. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on? Is there anything that we didn't get to that you feel called to talk about?
I touched on this, but if you can find a mentor throughout the whole process, even if it's studying for the LSAT, someone who's already been through it. So that's what I mean by a mentor. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Someone who's already been through it, that you can vent to, that you can get advice to. Sometimes we just need that human connection and not some article, right? It makes a difference to hear from a human.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said earlier, finding someone who is in a place that you want to be, and I think that means maybe grade wise, but also, are they taking the time for themselves? Are they resting? Are they focusing on physical or mental well-being? Taking advice from people who aren't perfect. No one's perfect, but who are in a place that you can see yourself, going to at that next level, I think is really important. I think I took a lot of advice from people who were not where I wanted to be in my future, because I thought that they were successful or whatever it is. So I think that's really important. Oh my God, Gabby, this was so good. This was so good. If people want to, I know it will be so helpful. And I just thank you for your time and your wisdom and your openness with sharing all of these things. I think the more open and honest and authentic we can be about our journeys, the more that the people who are just getting started will hopefully find some peace and some tools and strategies to get through it with a little bit more ease, excitement, enjoyment, support, all of those things. If anyone wants to connect with you or learn more about you, what are the best ways to find you?
Yes, I was just going to say, have them reach out to me via email, I think is the best way. And then if they want my phone number, depending on how frequently they want to chat, then I can share it with them. But for now, I think email, feel free to share it in the notes.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for all of your time and all of your wisdom. This was absolutely incredible, and I can't wait to chat more with you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gabby. Bye, everyone. Have a great day.